You wake up reaching for your phone before your eyes have fully adjusted to the light. Not because someone important might have called. Not because you're expecting life-changing news. Just because for a brief moment, the silence feels unbearable. A glowing screen offers relief before you've even had the chance to ask yourself how you actually feel. By the time you've scrolled through headlines, messages, videos, and opinions from people you'll never meet, something subtle has already happened. The day no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the endless current of information, pulling at your attention from every direction. Most people never notice the exact moment they surrender it. The strange part is that life has never looked more connected from the outside. We can speak to someone across the world in seconds. Every answer seems only a search away. Artificial intelligence can now write stories, compose music, diagnose diseases, and imitate human conversation with astonishing speed. Every year, machines become more capable while humans become more uncertain. We celebrate innovation as if progress itself were proof that we're moving in the right direction. But deep underneath the excitement, another feeling keeps growing. A quiet unease. A suspicion that something essential is slipping through our fingers. You may not have words for it. You might simply feel more distracted than you used to. More exhausted after spending hours online than after a day of physical work. You may wonder why. Despite unlimited access to information, certainty feels harder to find than ever before. That feeling isn't irrational. It's the feeling of standing in the middle of history, while history quietly changes what it means to be human. Yuval Noah Harari has spent years studying civilizations, empires, religions, technology, and the long arc of human evolution. His warning isn't that machines will suddenly overthrow humanity in some dramatic science fiction scenario. His concern is more unsettling than that. His warning is that humanity may willingly hand over the very things that made us human in the first place. Not because we're forced, because it feels convenient. That distinction changes everything. History rarely announces its turning points while people are living through them. The citizens of ancient Rome didn't wake up one morning, declaring that they were witnessing the slow transformation of an empire. Farmers during the agricultural revolution didn't realize they were participating in one of the greatest shifts in human existence. The people who lived through the Industrial Revolution couldn't fully grasp that factories would eventually reshape families, education, politics, cities, and even the rhythm of everyday thought. History doesn't arrive with fireworks, it whispers. Only years later do people look back and recognize the invisible line they crossed. What if that's exactly where we are now? Not standing before the future, already living inside it. And perhaps that's why so many people feel strangely disconnected from themselves. It's difficult to trust your own thoughts when thousands of voices compete for your attention every hour. It's difficult to understand your own desires when algorithms continuously learn which emotions keep you watching longest. The battle isn't simply for your time anymore. It's for your awareness. For thousands of years, human beings believed freedom meant controlling the outside world. We built stronger nations, better tools, faster transportation, more efficient industries. Every generation inherited greater power than the one before it. Looking back, it's almost miraculous how far we've come. A species that once feared predators now sends spacecraft beyond our solar system. Yet somewhere along the way, another question quietly emerged. What happens if we conquer the world but lose control over ourselves? That question isn't new. In fact, some of history's greatest thinkers devoted their lives to answering it. Long before smartphones, before artificial intelligence, before global markets connected billions of people, philosophers noticed something curious about human nature. The greatest dangers often came not from outside enemies, but from the hidden forces operating within our own minds. The ancient Stoics observed how easily people surrendered their peace to circumstances they couldn't control. Buddhist teachers described the restless mind, constantly chasing pleasure, while avoiding discomfort, creating endless cycles of dissatisfaction. Across different cultures separated by continents and centuries, remarkable minds arrived at surprisingly similar conclusions. The human mind is powerful, but it is also deeply vulnerable, not because it's weak, because it's programmable. Thousands of years ago, stories programmed civilizations. Myths created nations. Religions united strangers who would never meet. Shared beliefs allowed millions of unrelated individuals to cooperate toward common goals. Harari often points out that humans became the dominant species, not because we were the strongest animals, but because we could collectively believe in ideas that existed only in our imagination. Money, borders, corporations, laws, human rights. None of these exist physically in nature, yet billions organize their lives around them every single day. Our greatest strength has always been our ability to create shared stories. But every strength carries a hidden vulnerability. If stories can unite us, they can also control us. And in the 21st century, stories no longer spread only through parents, teachers, books, or communities. They spread through machines designed to optimize attention itself. For most of human history, information was scarce. Today, attention is scarce. That may sound like a small difference. It isn't. When information was limited, wisdom often depended on discovering more knowledge. Now the opposite problem exists. You drown in information while starving for clarity. Have you ever noticed how difficult it has become simply to sit quietly with your own thoughts? Even a few empty minutes at the grocery store, standing in line for coffee, or waiting for a friend, often trigger an automatic movement toward your pocket. The phone appears almost without conscious intention. Who decided? You or the habit? Neuroscientists describe habits as pathways that become increasingly automatic through repetition. The brain constantly searches for ways to conserve energy. Every repeated action strengthens neural circuits until behaviors require remarkably little conscious effort. That's incredibly useful when learning to drive a car or play an instrument. But the same mechanism works just as effectively for compulsive scrolling, or outrage, or anxiety, or dependency. Technology didn't invent these vulnerabilities. It discovered them, then refined them, then scaled them across billions of people simultaneously. The remarkable success of modern digital platforms isn't built merely on software. It's built on understanding the deepest patterns of human psychology. Every notification, recommendation, autoplay feature, and personalized feed reflects years of studying what captures attention, what stimulates curiosity, and what keeps people coming back. Not because someone is secretly controlling every decision you make, because human behavior is astonishingly predictable, and prediction has become one of the most valuable resources on Earth. For centuries, power belonged primarily to those who controlled land. Later, it belonged to those who controlled industry. Then finance. Today, an entirely different kind of wealth is emerging. Knowledge about human behavior. The companies shaping the modern world aren't simply selling products anymore. They're learning who you are. What excites you? What frightens you? What makes you hesitate? What makes you buy? What keeps you awake at night? Every click becomes another tiny clue. Individually, those clues seem meaningless. Together, they form something remarkably intimate. A digital version of you. And here's where Harari's warning becomes difficult to ignore. Throughout history, human beings believed that no one knew them better than they knew themselves. We trusted our inner experience because it was the one place no one else could fully enter. Even when others misunderstood us, we believed our own consciousness remained uniquely ours. But what happens when algorithms begin recognizing patterns in your behavior before you consciously recognize them yourself? What happens when software predicts your choices with increasing accuracy? What happens when machines learn to influence emotions you've barely noticed you're feeling? These questions no longer belong to science fiction. They belong to everyday life. The unsettling reality isn't that artificial intelligence may someday become smarter than humans in certain tasks. That has already begun in countless fields. The deeper question is whether intelligence alone has become the new source of authority. If a machine consistently predicts what you'll enjoy, who you'll vote for, what you'll purchase, and even which relationships are likely to succeed, how long before people stop asking themselves what they truly want? Convenience has always carried a price. Sometimes the cost isn't paid immediately. Sometimes it's paid so gradually that almost nobody notices until the bill has become impossible to ignore. And perhaps that's the quiet crossroads humanity now faces. Not a dramatic battle between humans and machines, but a slow negotiation over something far more personal: your attention, your choices, your identity. Because the greatest revolution in history may not be happening in laboratories or government buildings. It may be happening inside the human mind itself. And once that transformation begins, the question is no longer whether technology will change civilization. The question is whether we'll still recognize ourselves when it does. That possibility feels distant until you notice how often your own mind no longer feels entirely like your own. You sit down to read a book, and within minutes an invisible itch begins to grow. Not because the book is boring, not because you're incapable of focusing. Something inside you has become accustomed to interruption. A thought appears, and before you've even finished the sentence in front of you, your hand reaches for your phone almost automatically. The interruption doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. That's what makes it so powerful. The greatest transformations in human history rarely begin with resistance. They begin with comfort. For most of our existence, survival demanded sustained attention. Our ancestors spent hours tracking animals through forests, watching the movement of clouds, listening for the slightest sound that might signal danger. Their minds evolved to notice patterns because missing one could mean death. Today, those same survival systems are still running. Only the forest has changed. Instead of listening for predators in the bushes, your brain scans for notifications. Instead of watching the horizon, it watches the corner of a screen. Every vibration, every red icon, every unexpected message triggers an ancient neurological circuit that once kept human beings alive. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. The problem is that evolution never prepared us for a world where thousands of people, companies, and increasingly intelligent systems compete every second for the privilege of occupying our attention. Attention has quietly become the most valuable resource on Earth because attention shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. Think about the last argument you had with someone. Did you disagree because one of you possessed the truth while the other didn't? Or were both of you living inside entirely different versions of reality, each one carefully assembled from different information, different experiences, and different digital environments? This is one of Harari's deepest concerns. Civilizations have always depended on shared stories. Whether those stories came through religion, national identity, or cultural traditions, they created a common foundation that allowed strangers to trust one another. But today's information landscape doesn't simply distribute stories. It customizes them. Two people standing in the same room can open the same social media platform and encounter completely different worlds. Different fears, different heroes, different enemies, different versions of what they believe is happening. Slowly, reality itself begins to fragment. When every person receives a personalized stream of information, society loses something invisible but essential: a shared sense of truth. History offers a warning here. Centuries ago, kingdoms understood that controlling information meant controlling power. Scribes copied manuscripts by hand. Religious authorities determined which text ordinary people could read. Monarchs censored ideas that threatened their rule. Then came the printing press. Knowledge exploded across Europe. New ideas spread faster than any empire could contain them. It fueled revolutions, scientific breakthroughs, and enormous social change. Many people celebrate that moment as humanity's liberation from centralized control. And in many ways it was. But every revolution creates new forms of power. The printing press decentralized information. Artificial intelligence may re-centralize influence in ways we've barely begun to understand. Not because one machine controls everyone, because countless intelligent systems continuously adapt to every individual, learning which words persuade them, which images move them, and which emotions keep them engaged. For the first time in history, persuasion itself is becoming automated. That changes the relationship between human beings and information in a profound way. In the past, propaganda was relatively blunt. Governments produced posters. Radio stations broadcast speeches. Newspapers printed headlines. Today, influence can become deeply personal. It learns, it adjusts, it remembers. Perhaps the most unsettling part is that we often mistake personalized influence for personal freedom. After all, if every recommendation seems perfectly tailored to us, it feels as though the world finally understands who we are. But does it? Or has it simply become exceptionally skilled at predicting our next impulse? Psychologists have long understood that human beings aren't nearly as rational as we like to believe. We tell ourselves stories about why we made a decision, but many of those explanations appear only after the choice has already been made. Experiments have repeatedly shown that emotions frequently arrive before conscious reasoning. The brain begins preparing actions milliseconds before we become aware of deciding. Consciousness, it seems, is often less like a commander issuing orders and more like a narrator trying to explain events already unfolding. That idea unsettled scientists because it challenged one of humanity's favorite beliefs, the belief that we are fully in control. Carl Jung approached this mystery from another direction. He believed enormous parts of the human psyche remain hidden beneath conscious awareness. Desires, fears, memories, instincts, and archetypal patterns quietly shape behavior without announcing themselves. Most people spend their lives believing they know themselves. Jung suggested that they know only the small island illuminated by consciousness, while an immense ocean remains beneath the surface. Technology now enters that ocean, not by understanding the soul, but by measuring behavior. Every pause before clicking, every search abandoned halfway through, every late-night purchase, every location visited, every pattern repeated. Machines don't need to understand your deepest motivations the way a philosopher might. They only need enough data to predict what you'll do next. Prediction becomes influence. Influence becomes power. And power rarely remains neutral for long. This is why Harari insists that the future will not simply be determined by technological capability. It will be determined by whoever controls the data describing human life. For centuries, Wealth flowed from natural resources: oil, coal, steel, land. Now a different resource sits beneath modern civilization: human experience itself. Your habits have become valuable. Your preferences have become valuable. Even your moments of uncertainty have become valuable, because uncertainty makes people easier to influence. Have you ever noticed how often you seek certainty when life becomes difficult? A frightening headline, an economic crisis, a personal loss. Moments like these create emotional vulnerability. Throughout history, people turn to religious leaders, philosophers, trusted elders, or close communities for guidance. Increasingly, many turn first to algorithms. They ask search engines, recommendation systems, artificial intelligence. Not because they're foolish, because these systems respond instantly. And human beings have always been drawn towards whatever reduces uncertainty. Yet certainty can become dangerously seductive. Nietzsche warned that people often prefer comforting illusions over difficult truths. Freedom sounds beautiful until it requires accepting responsibility for uncertainty. It is far easier to let someone, or something else, decide what to believe, what to buy, who to trust, even who to become. Perhaps that's why convenience deserves more suspicion than fear. Fear alerts us. Convenience lulls us to sleep. Every generation inherits technologies that promise to simplify life. The wheel reduced labor. Electricity extended the day. The internet collapsed geographical distance. Artificial intelligence